Hey Dosers, thanks for joining us. Tracie here from the San Marcos Escondido campus, and we are talking about the Promised Land. And today we are in Joshua chapters 3 and 4. And there are just a couple of things that I want us to take from it. We're going to talk about chapter 3 first. And I don't know where you're at right now, but God may be asking you to step off into some big things. Maybe something that's scary, maybe something that is different, something that feels dangerous or out of control. And the Israelites are no different. As they were looking, they could see where they were headed, and they knew that God had promised them that. But when they looked at the river, it talks about the season that it was in, and we know based on that the river was very wide. It had grown. It was swollen, it says, and it was moving quickly. And they knew that they had thousands of people to get across with all of their things, and it looked impossible. But that's where God always comes in, isn't it? And He made a way. But I love it when He asks us to step out in obedience. Oftentimes we don't see it until we actually take that first step. And that's the story that we see in chapter 3, is that He says, when the priests who are holding my presence, when their foot hits the water, I will stop it upstream. So it took that action of step first. But what I love so much is as you read, as the priests go into the water and it's stopped upstream, it says they're standing on dry ground, and the presence of God went before them, and then the priests were in the middle, and the people passed by on dry ground, and then the presence of God went behind them. And I think what we can take from this is it doesn't matter what you are getting ready to step into, or maybe what feels like a river that you're in. God says, I will go before you, I will be in it with you, and I am going to come behind you. In the Psalms it says, you hem me in. I love that visual. And God says, it doesn't matter what you're going through today, I will hem you in with my presence. And Isaiah, it tells us, you're going through the river, it will not overtake you. And if you're in a fire, you will not be scorched because of my righteous right hand. And that's what we can take from chapter 3. But then as they cross over, God tells Joshua now, it's like, okay, now the 12 tribes, the leaders, they need to come and grab a boulder, and they need to bring it with you because you're gonna forget. He knows that we are fickle people. He tells us over and over again, remember, remember, remember. What are you doing to remember? And He tells them to take these boulders, and He says, so that when your children ask, what are those for? You will tell of my faithfulness. You will tell of my goodness. You will tell that I am trustworthy, and the story of how I brought you through on dry land, and that my presence never left you. And I love so much, this chapter in particular makes me think about my grandmother, who had all these spiral notebooks. She probably paid a dime for them. And every single day, from the time she was in her late 20s, she made just a jot about what happened that day, about the farm, about her kids, about how God provided, about the seasons of crops and the dairy cows, and how all of the ways that God was faithful to them. And so those are treasures to us today. My mother's prayer journal, where she would put the prayer and she would be faithful to go back and put the answer in there. And I will say that I have prayer journals. I had my grandkids not too long ago take rocks out of our yard, and we put on their words or pictures about God's goodness to our family, and they're now in my yard. And as we see them, we talk about them. And so over and over again in the Psalms, it says that you will tell the next generation. Psalm 71:18 says, when I am old and gray, may I still be telling of God's goodness and faithfulness to the next generation. So my encouragement to you today is, like, He never leaves us. If you're in that season, I want you to hear that and rest in that. And for the rest of us, where are your stones? What are you doing to create memories so that when your kids or other people ask, you are able to tell the story of God's goodness and God's faithfulness? And maybe you'll need to look back on them as well as you go through other seasons. But get your stones, Daily Dosers, and let's start telling the story. I'll see you next time.